بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم على سيدنا وحبيبنا ونبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. So in our journey or our trek through the seerah, the life story of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we're still in the Meccan phase, in the early days. Last week we saw that after the very first revelation, which was Iqra, there was a small pause, a small break in the revelation, where the Prophet ﷺ was a bit perturbed and disturbed. Some seerah writers have said that this break lasted for 3 years, and some say for 2.5 years. But inshallah ta'ala, what is correct is that it lasted for a few days. And then after some days, we read the narration in which the Prophet ﷺ, he's coming back from the Ghar Hira, from the cave of Hira, and he hears a voice in the sky saying that you are the messenger of Allah, and he looks up and it was the same angel that appeared to him the first time in the cave of Hira in that night in Ramadan. And again, because of the angelic encounter and the awe-inspiring nature of the angel being the angel, what angel are we talking about? Jibreel alayhi salam, Jibraeel or Jibreel, both readings are correct. The angel Gabriel, because of his awesome presence and his awesome nature, it inspired dread and fear and awe in the Prophet's heart. And so yet again he comes back and he says, Zammiluni, Zammiluni, or Dathiruni, Dathiruni, cover me, wrap me up. And this, the lady Khadija radiallahu anha, she did again, and he asked that he be given some water to appease his state. And that's when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed, Ya ayyuhal muddathir kum fa'anzir. O you who are wrapped up, arise and warn. And from that point onwards, revelation came fairly frequently, or quite frequently. And what did we say? When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Iqra, Bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq, read in the name of your Lord who created. What rank did he have? He had the rank of a Nabi, of a prophet. And when Ya ayyuhal muddathir was revealed, he had the rank of a Rasul, to now a messenger, to convey the message to people. We know through the seerah narratives that in his 13-year stay in Makkah as a prophet, the first 3 of those years are years of secret da'wah. Da'wah which is not openly done, which is not hidden from people entirely, because by the time that he's reaching out to a few people, some people accept, many people don't. Of course, those many people are going to tell others that, oh, do you know what happened to me? But in general, he wasn't publicizing his da'wah. It was done secretly, sirri. And that happens for 3 years. Last week, we also looked at what was the Prophet ﷺ initially calling to. That's really important. It's fine and wonderful to know that the first surah was Iqra, the next surah to be revealed was Ya ayyuhal muddathir. But what were the contents of these early surahs and these early revelations, which then obviously must have formed the very backbone and the very foundations of the early believing community and of Iman, of faith itself? Well, we didn't look at the deeper contents of the actual surahs, but we took the surahs as a whole, and we said that the scholars have repeatedly pointed out that along with the command to have good ethics and morals. The word morality, refers to things that are right and wrong. Things that are moral relate to right and wrong, good and bad. And in the case of religious people, sin and obedience as well. So along with the initial teachings of morality, being moral, being truthful in speech, being just in our dealings, being kind to the orphans, being charitable to the poor, being someone who joins ties of relationship, any relatives and family, he or she tries to maintain those ties of relationship and honor those family bonds. These are the basic core qualities that came down in the early revelation. But along with that, the cardinal message, the central message, was worship Allah alone and shun all false gods. All things that are worshipped besides Allah, in whatever form they take, whatever form or fashion they are, shun them, turn your backs on them, and single out Allah alone for worship. That became the central pillar, that is the central pillar of the message of Islam. It has always been the central pillar of every prophet and messenger Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sent to the people of this earth. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and I think I could have mentioned this verse last week, وَلَقَدْ بَأَثْنَا فِي كُلِّ أُمَّةٍ رَسُولًا أَنِ اعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ وَاجْتَنِبُوا الطَّاغُوتَ. To every nation, to every ummah, to every peoples, we sent a prophet, a messenger, with the command, أَنِ اعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ, worship Allah, وَاجْتَنِبُوا الطَّاغُوتَ, and turn away from these taghoots. And the word taghut here, as Imam Malik and other commentators have, other imams and commentators have expressed, the word taghut here doesn't just mean any tyrant. Taghut and tagha in Arabic is to transgress the bounds, to step over the bounds, meaning to be unjust and to behave unjustly or tyrannically to others, for example. Tagha, we get taghuts, and quite often the Quran calls certain tyrannical rulers and unjust rulers taghuts, taghut. But the word taghut here doesn't mean the politically unjust ruler. The word taghut means all that is worshipped besides Allah. All that is worshipped besides Allah is considered taghut when, especially if it's talking about living people, living creatures, when they accept their worship of them. Of course, those that are worshipped besides Allah and those people that are worshipped besides Allah and who do not like this and say this is wrong, then of course they are not taghuts. The obvious one in mind is who? Who from the bashar, the human beings, is greatly worshipped, but we don't consider him, na'udhu billah, to be a taghut. Isa alayhi salam, the Prophet Jesus, peace be upon him, deified by 2 billion people on this planet. Okay, deified by about 2 billion people on this planet out of 7 billion people. But he's not taghut because his message was always to worship Allah alone. And what happened after he was raised was not in his hands. And certainly not of his doing. And the ummah, the ummah of the Prophet ﷺ has a part of our being on our earth is to witness to the truth and to wisely correct falsehood, especially about Isa alayhi salam and his mother, for example. And we are meant to be witnesses to the truth of his prophethood and his messengership, and that he never claimed, even for a second of his life, that he should be worshipped besides God. Rather, he always said, "O people, worship Allah." There is no one else to be worshipped but Him. So that became the core of the message, but along with the core of that message, worship Allah, turn away from all forms of idolatry or shirk or setting up partners with Allah. There was this call to high moral standards, to be concerned about the poor and the needy and the vulnerable, not to lie and not to cheat, and to have compassion for others and to honor the ties, the blood ties and the ties of relationship. Those core qualities is something that we Muslims need to work on, and I suspect considerably. Because whatever else is going on in the wider society, and whatever forms of Islamophobia which are rising day by day, whatever forms are happening, it would be a failure on our part as Muslims individually and collectively that our moral and our ethical character doesn't shine out. And we don't do it for brownie points. Oh, let's be moral, compassionate and this and truthful, because we're going to score some points with the media, in the newspaper. Perhaps they will change their opinion. Perhaps many will change their opinion about us. That's not why we do it. We do it because Allah has told us it's the right thing to do. Truthfulness is good, and Allah loves that good. Truthfulness is something commanded by Allah, and we need to obey Allah. The consequences of being morally good and morally upright, and the light, the nur that Allah gives to individuals and communities, when they have that moral beauty, then alhamdulillah, the consequences of that, which such that it does change people's hearts, it does draw people to that light and beauty, then that's a consequence. That's not the intended goal per se. Why? Because supposing everyone turns their back on us, do we say, oh, well, we might as well start cheating and lying because, well, it didn't do anything? No, it's sought after in itself because it's something loved by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we need to be moral people, upright and moral people in our individual lives, such that we, to the best of our ability, and we will fall short, but it's a matter of what do I want to aspire to? And I, for the life of me, find it difficult to understand how for example, can we get rid of this echo? It's talking to myself is problematic. I can hear myself on a rebound. Can we? Is it setting there?
Is it in the other section?
Yeah.
What I don't understand from, say, practicing brothers, not all practicing brothers, I can't even say the most, but just significant practicing brothers, that here is a man, he's got white hair, or he's got significant white hair in his head, he's got a white beard or significant white beard, or he's got a walking stick, something that you know that he can't be, oh, you're bro, oh, bro. What's this sickness? What does it mean, bro? Allah Jalla wa Ala told us to be courteous and respectful. Where's bro? Send it back to the slum that it came from. And don't come tell me, oh, this is East London chat, because it's claptrap. Allah didn't ask you to be an East Londoner. Allah asked you to follow the beauty of the Sunnah. It's just incidental where you and I are born. Bro, have some respect. Brother, that's fine. Akhi, my brother, that's fine. Sidi, that's fine. Uncle, that's fine. Any term of respect, especially when it's elders. Oh, bearded brother who thinks he's on the Sunnah. Are you so ignorant that the Sunnah doesn't, that you don't know the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, that he who doesn't honor the elders or have compassion to the youngsters, he's not of us? You think the sunnah was slang? Was streetwise? Get away. If we're starting with that level of character, then there's no way else but down. We should aspire to husn khuluq. And husn khuluq is not good character. Husn khuluq is not good character. It's a beautiful, excellent, refined character. Okay? That's what the sunnah invites to. Wallahi, the sunnah does not invite to anything less than refined and beautiful character. And you will not find this on the streets. You'll find this in certain virtuous people, even some non-Muslims, leaving their iman, their kufr, their lack of iman. Even certain non-Muslims have certain refined behavior. But you'll find people who have refined behavior are very rare in society. Why? Because we live in an age in which everything is being pulled down to its lowest common denominator. The more cheap we can make ourselves, and the more entertaining we can make ourselves, and the more unlike the other we can make ourselves, and the less morally distinct and spiritually refined we are, then that's what we need to aim for. And then we can all go into one of those chat shows and we can bleed our hearts dry and tell everyone how sinful we are, and hopefully we'll get acceptance from them, because what we want is just acceptance of our sins so sins can be okay. The believer has a great problem with this, simply because she or he realizes it's so opposite to the Quranic teachings. It's so it's so very different to what the Prophet ﷺ taught us or inspired us to be. So each of us, myself foremost, have to really see our moral content. And as a community, we need to shine morally. And in this case, I would be brave enough to say that here many Muslim elders are from the least moral people. That doesn't mean to say that youngsters and middle-aged people are highly moral. It just means that once upon a time you could perhaps look to a man or a woman, as the case may be, of 35, 40 plus, and you could see beauty, light, nur morally, spiritually even. But that age is gone. That age is gone. You'll find the bearded, grey-haired elder who comes to the mosque. He's quite happy to give you advice on how to cheat the DHS system, cheat the tax thing, cheat this, cheat that, duck and dive as a young person. And that's morally unacceptable, especially when we're people who do frequent the mosque and try to emulate the teachings of the Prophet ﷺ. If we're one of those Muslims who have kind of not done a U-turn away from the world yet, and we're not quite sure about should I be praying and fasting, let alone following the Prophet ﷺ, well, khalas, you expect something from people who don't have a focus on God. But those whose hearts Allah has turned towards Him at some level, and whose soul is open to the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, then that shouldn't be the case. And that's really, really important. Otherwise, we're beginning to miss the very point. So that's how far we go. What I'd like to do today, before we move on to the next phase of the dawah, which is the open dawah, the dawah jahriyah, I'd like to just, if I can call, is Dr. Salim here? I'd like to get Dr. Salim to, leave it Iqra, but the next two surahs, Surah Mudaththir and Surah Muzammil, which are very similar in style and and similar in content, and also similar in how they came down to the Prophet and what he did. Cover me, wrap me up in a blanket or in a robe. Let's just look at some of the beginning verses of let's do Mudaththir first. Mudaththir is Surah 74, and Muzammil, which came after, is Surah 73. Mudaththir, which came first, is Surah 74, and Muzammil is Surah 73. So let's have a few verses of Surah Al-Mudaththir.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها المدثر قم فأنذر وربك فكبر وثيابك فطهر والرجز فاهجر ولا تمنن تستكثر ولربك فاصبر.
O you who are wrapped up in a cloak, arise and warn, and glorify your Lord, and your garments, your clothing, keep free from filth and stain, and shun all wickedness, evil and abomination, and do not expect any increase for yourself in the giving, but for your Lord be patient and persevering. These are the first, in this case, 7 verses in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying to his beloved sallallahu alayhi wasallam that I see you. Don't think I don't see you. That don't think I'm not concerned. That you're wrapped up in a state of fear, in a state of dread, because you've had that angelic encounter, and again the encounter with the wahi, revelation. But that is the nature of bearing this heavy burden. That is the nature of having this final revelation, this final wahi being sent to you over a period of time in bits and pieces. Arise and warn. Qum fa'anzir. Make inzar. And your clothes keep clean. And there is an indication there that if the outer should be kept clean, then even more so that the inward heart and soul should also be kept clean. And shun all abominations. The worst of abominations, the worst of evils is shirk, which the Prophet's people, the Makkans, they were practicing shirk in the form of obvious idolatry. That they believed some of their deities and idols shared in power and influence and controlling creation, along with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for which therefore they were acts of worship, such as dua, such as sacrifice, was done to some of them in order to draw closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself. That is idolatry, shirk. So shun all abominations and wrongdoing, from shirk to lying, to cheating, to killing, to whatever it be. Meaning, aspire to live a life of virtue, piety, beauty and godliness. Shun all abominations, and nor expect in your giving to people any increase for yourself. There's a difference of opinion amongst the commentators what this means. One of the meanings is that in your helping the poor and the needy, don't do it for a worldly gain. That my name will be written in neon lights. I'll be on the cover of Newsweek as a great philanthropist or a great giver of charity. Just do it for the sake of Allah and for the service of others. And your Lord, and for your Lord be patient. وَلِرَبِّكَ فَاصْبِرْ. For your Lord's sake be patient, because this tremendous task of inzar, of warning people against the anger of Allah and his hellfire and his punishment, to those who disobey him, or turn their backs on him, or disbelieve him, or reject him. This call and this warning will bring with it untold difficulties. And the burden that you will have to bear in doing so, it's unimaginable. So learn to cultivate a type of restraint, sabr, in the soul, because this task of your being a Rasul and reaching out to people to guide them away from darkness to light, from kufr to iman, from disbelief to faith, from shirk to tawheed, requires nothing less than sabr. So in these 7 verses, they're quite personal to the Prophet ﷺ, though they have a message that extends beyond the Prophet ﷺ, because it's telling us that we need certain qualities, even though we are obviously not prophets and messengers, but we are part of his ummah who need to communicate the message, and we need certain qualities and virtues. So you can begin to see, and then if you can just read verse 8.
فإذا نقر في الناقور فذلك يومئذ يوم عسير.
And then these two, the verses that follow, the two that Dr. Salim has read, that finally when the trumpet is blown or when the trumpet is sounded, that day, that will be the day of immense distress, is really what the Prophet ﷺ is making inzar about, warning about. Bashir al-Nadhir, good bringer of good news, glad tidings, and a warner. He's warning against this day of distress, which will inevitably come. So don't get caught off guard in terms of not preparing to be with Allah or to meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you can begin to see such a message. Purify your clothes, your outward and the inward. Glorify your Lord. Okay, have patience. You can begin to see and do things for Allah's sake. Give charity for Allah's sake. Just keep away from wrong things entirely. You can see how it would shape those who first heard this message. And then after Muddathir came Muzammil, but in the Quran as we read it now, it's actually the surah before. So again, let's read... let's read the 9 verses, inshallah. Bismillah.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها المزمل قم الليل إلا قليلا نصفه أو انقص منه قليلا أو زد عليه ورتل القرآن ترتيلا إنا سنلقي عليك قولا ثقيلا إن ناشئة الليل هي أشد وطئا وأقوم قيلا إن لك في النهار سبحا طويلا واذكر اسم ربك وتبتل إليه تبتيلا رب المشرق والمغرب لا إله إلا هو فاتخذه وكيلا واصبر على ما يقولون واهجرهم هجرا جميلا.
O you who are enfolded in a blanket, stand by night, stand to pray by night, but not all night. Qalila, stand to pray except for a small portion of the night. Stand to pray except for a small portion of the night. Half of it, or a little less than half, or a little more than half, and recite the Quran in slow, rhythmic, measured tones. Soon shall we send down upon you قولا ثقيلا, a weighty message. Truly, the rising or the standing up by night is most potent and powering for governing the soul, and most suitable for making the words of praise. Truly, there is for you by day a lot of preoccupation with so many worldly engagements. But keep in remembrance the name of your Lord and devote yourself fully and totally to Him. For He is the Lord of the East and the West. There is no God but He. None has the right to be worshipped except He. And He is the controller of affairs and the disposer of affairs. And have patience with what they say. And leave them hajran jamila. Leave them and leave them with beauty. Hajr means to boycott someone, to move away from them. But quite often you do that with menace and malice and anger and whatever. The Quran is saying, leave these people, hajran jamila, with a beautiful leaving. And have patience with what they say and leave them with a beautiful leaving. And leave me alone to deal with those in possession of the good things of this life who deny the truth, and bear with them for a little while. So this becomes the second revelation. And this revelation then focuses on one of the most important qualities that every Muslim must nurture, which they are commanded here, to stand up to pray all of the night except a little. Subhanallah. Stand up. قُمِ اللَّيْلِ إِلَّا قَلِيلٍ. Stand up. This is right. This is the second revelation coming to the Prophet ﷺ and the early Muslims. The lady Khadija, Ali radiallahu anhu, Sayyidina Abu Bakr, Zayd ibn Haritha, and then Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, he's given da'wah to the likes of Uthman and many others like that. Okay? And these small 10, 15, 20 people, this is the message that they've been told. That it's directed to the Prophet ﷺ, but it extends beyond him. Stand up at night, all of it, but a little. Or a half of it, or less than half. Or more than half. So what happens is, in the early days, night prayer, Qiyamul Layl, is an obligation upon the Prophet ﷺ and all the Muslims. And they're doing, all but a little. That's what the Prophet ﷺ was doing. We also know Sayyidina Abu Bakr was doing very much that. And some of them were doing a third of the night. Some of them were doing half. And a few of them were doing 2/3 or more. SubhanAllah. Because the Prophet ﷺ has realized he is Rasulullah. He is Khatamun Nabiyyin. He'll be soon told that he is the seal of the prophets. He is the awaited prophet. And the Muslim community will be the last ummah of the last prophet. They have this duty to correct, because the Prophet comes down in a period of great darkness, a period of great change in the world, but also a period of great darkness. The teachings of the former prophets, they've all but faded away. And even the last prophet, alayhi salam, Jesus alayhi salam, who was only 500 or odd years before, whatever of his ministry of teachings that he with the people for 3 odd years, as the Bible tells us, whatever he taught then was extremely confused by the people. And so much was invented round it that the light of Allah's oneness and Tawheed had been eclipsed around the earth with various forms of idolatry and shirk. and moral virtues were on the decline. This was an age, they call the age in which the Prophet ﷺ is just about coming into. You know, in a few hundred years, they'll call that the actual age. In old history, it used to be called the actual age, and in anthropology. Why? Because it's the age in which we're coming into the medieval age, which begins to have the basis of, well, it's medieval Europe, but it's like Golden Age Islam, where we begin to have the opening of scientific and worldly enlightenment. So the change is going on there. Mankind are soon not going to be living like they have been for thousands of years. It's going to be a complete change. But morals are loose. And even religious people, so many of them have just kind of chased after the dunya. Yeah, there are monks, but they've gone to another extreme. Their religion now doesn't allow them to function in normal society. And then the priests, and many of the priests and the rabbis in normal society, they are more dunyafied than the average Christian or Jewish worshipper. I'm painting a very broad picture. That isn't to say that there weren't great exceptions to this. So it's a tremendous qawlun thaqila. There's going to be a weighty message, because this is going to be the ultimate truth by which all else is going to be judged. That's how deep it is. And then the verses continue. Rise by night, because the night has the most blessings, spiritual blessings. Our ulama, based upon various verses of the Quran, tell us the day has the greatest barakah in terms of bounties and worldly gifts and money and general rizq, general worldly rizq. The day is best for that, and the night is greater in terms of spiritual gifts. The day more so in terms of worldly gifts, and the night more so in terms of spiritual gifts. It doesn't mean you can't get spiritual gifts in the daytime or worldly gifts at night. It's just that the night has generally more. There are more futuhat, more spiritual openings that Allah gives at night than He does in the day. So He and they, and therefore we, are reminded of that. Because by day you have so many preoccupations that you can't really make that dhikr and that Quran and that connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or it's harder to. And this, the Prophet ﷺ, this is an obligation, qiyamul layl, tahajjud. Because Allah is asking them to be not small people. He is asking them to be great people. People with purpose. People with connection to Him. And so, great people, what have they to do with sleeping too much and having so much comforts and luxury around them? What do great people have to do with that when their hearts are attached to Allah and not the dunya? When they know that the nature of dunya is that it makes you clingy. Okay, it makes you clingy. Why can you and I and the rest of the Muslims, why can't we even do basic, simple acts of jihad? I'm not talking about jihad of the hand, of the sword. I'm talking about jihad in service of, in the sense of striving to pray our prayers on time with some devotion, striving to gain some serious knowledge, striving to serve our parents, striving to help the needy and the poor in significant ways. Why? Because we have so much dunya around us. I mean, you will see. The snow will start coming in, and then Abu Ali will think, oh, do I really want to go and give a circle? The heater is on, central heating is running, sofa is nice. And the people will think, do I want to come out to the mosque or to wherever the sheikh is speaking? Why? Because we're too clingy. Why? Because we're too clingy. Do I want to lose my position in society that I've got? Do I want... It's something to do with dunya. But great people are people who, they know that the akhirah is far greater. What is this dunya except just something that you pass through to get to akhirah? Only small people, they live small and they die small. Big people, they say, subhanallah. Don't get too comfortable in a place we were never meant to be comfortable in. But look at us. I mean, it's more of a British thing than it is a European thing, but look at us. Okay, we're just so eager to do up our houses and do them again and do them. I'm not talking about because, your roof of your house fell down, it's collapsing and I have to get some builders in. Of course you do. But look at the luxury that we spend. And if men can't stand up and do some type of juhud and jihad, where do you expect the ummah to go? What do you expect the ummah to be? When the only jihad we make now is striving to get money and more money and more money, how can Allah Jalla wa Ala bless the ummah? And part of that is because we haven't understood what this was about. And so many of us read the seerah and we know these, and this came down and then there was a little gap and whatever. But the early surahs don't make any impact on us. So the Prophet ﷺ and the companions, and what happens is right at the 1 year later, so these few verses are revealed initially. And then the rest of this surah, Al-Muzammil, the rest of it, especially the very last verse, which is verse 20, quite a long verse. Verse 20 then says, and I'll read the verse 20, this is all of it in English. Your Lord knows that you stand in prayer in the night, 2/3 of the night, or half the night, or 1/3 of the night, as does a party of those with you. But Allah appoints the night and the day in due measure. He knows that you are unable to keep count of how much you've been standing or how much you've not been standing. So He has turned to you in mercy. So read as much as the Quran as you are able, as is easy for you. And then it carries on like that. So 1 year or more later, when Allah revealed the end of this, basically revealed verse 20 of the surah, this lifts the burden of Qiyamul Layl being obligatory. It was obligatory for 1 whole year, that's what they're doing. And then Allah lifts the obligation and He says, do of it as much as you can. And if you can't do it, you can't do it. If you can do it, you can do it. And the ulama agree, for the ummah, Qiyamul Layl is now no longer fard, it's sunnah. It is the greatest and noblest prayer after the obligatory prayers and the sunnah prayers that go with the obligations, in general. And again, there is some khilaf about that. But for the Prophet ﷺ, is it sunnah or is it still fard? Is it still wajib? One group of ulama say, likewise for him it's sunnah. And the others say, no, it's still fard for him, but sunnah for the rest. Whether it was fard or sunnah, he ﷺ and these companions in general never left Qiyamul Layl. Just for the next 20 odd years, that's how it was. And one of the early Muslims, one of the Salaf said that, I prayed Qiyamul Layl for 20 years of my life until I reached the age where, I'm going to meet my Lord. And for the first 10 years, it was an effort. For the first 10 years, it was an effort. And in the next 10 years, it was sheer delight. Because something begins to happen inside when we sacrifice the best of what we could have in terms of sleep and comfort. May Allah Jalla wa Ala give us tawfiq to begin to do some sort of Qiyamul Layl and even some sort of regularity or irregularity. Later on, Surah Wad-Duha would be revealed. Very soon, Surah Wad-Duha, which was a personal message to the Prophet ﷺ, if you can find Wad-Duha there. Because there was another gap. And again, the Prophet ﷺ, now that revelation is coming thick and fast, and then you have this kind of gap, he's worried. And then some people, some of the non-Muslims who had heard of the whole story of revelation and whatever, were mocking him and insulting him. Some of them started saying to each other, that's because, what do you expect of an orphan? And, even his Lord has orphaned him, has abandoned him. And even if you're, very connected to Allah, sometimes the words of close people can really hurt. Maybe your skin is thick enough that people from far away, it doesn't really hurt you. But sometimes close people, their words can still hurt, no matter how thick-skinned one is. وَالضُّحَى, by the morning late, وَاللَّيْلِ إِذَا سَجَى, and by the night when it is still. مَا وَدَّعَكَ رَبُّكَ وَمَا قَلَى. Your Lord hasn't forsaken you, and nor is He displeased with you. Your Lord hasn't forsaken you, forsook you, and neither is He displeased with you. وَلَلْآخِرَةُ خَيْرٌ لَكَ مِنَ الْأُولَى, and the hereafter is preferable and better than the present life. وَلَسَوْفَ يُعْطِيكَ رَبُّكَ فَتَرْضَى, and soon your Lord will give you something which He will be pleased with you. And then, didn't He find you an orphan and give you shelter? And didn't He find you wandering and guided you aright? And didn't He find you needy and made you independent? So don't treat the orphans harshly. And don't repel the one who comes asking something from you. And the bounties of your Lord proclaim. These are the type of things we need to be working on in our own lives. Our connection, our rabita with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Our moral integrity and worth. Our inward spiritual growth. And the more our earthly life numbers in days and years, the older we get. Slowly and steadily, our heart should be turning away from running after dunya to seeking Allah and akhirah. Being 40 is not an age in which I'm still more interested in smartphones and iPhones than in reading Quran. I'm more interested in the latest furnishings and carpets and whatever than I am dhikr of Allah. And I'm more interested in some worldly preoccupations of cricket and whatever than I am of thinking about death and contemplating on Allah's favours and tafakkur. It can't be happening like that. Even though we live in a society where from cradle to grave, the advertising industry is always trying to make us dunyafied. And even TV programs and films, not all of them, but many of them, portray the world, normally it's portraying America, as this haven, this Jannah on earth, that we need to all aspire to live like an American, in a big house, in a number of cars. And that's actually what happened to English culture when it became American-fied. By the time you have Dallas on TV in the 1970s, okay, and you have all of those other American programs, we in grey, you know, in the 70s, right, England was kind of grey, right, grey and a bit dull, right, okay, and then, you know, we had to suffer Maggie's years and so many things were happening, right. And then you know, and then every Saturday, I can't remember if it was Saturday or Sunday, then you had this show called Dallas, which was like the biggest thing on TV. And you saw how the kind of rich, oil-rich family Americans were living, and you thought, you know what, I want a bit of that. This idea of I want a bit of that is ingrained in TVs and movies, so that you could never be satisfied and contented with whatever little you have. You have to always have what the Smiths and the Jones had. Okay. And when the heart is being tutored like that, it needs something opposite to healing. And this is zuhd, worldly detachment. Okay. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So just to finish this, if we are not going to be people who even just aspire to this, even innamal a'malu binniyat, actions are judged by intentions. Even to have this inspiration, this niyyah, this intention, what goodness Allah will do with just the intention. But not to have this intention or aspiration, it's a failure in our Islam. And in Allah's eyes, we become small people and we die small people. But even with just this intention, even if we don't really get there, but we have this real, true intention, in Allah's eyes, we become great, and we die great people. and because we wanted to live piously, righteously, in a godly way, with good morals, and we like people with good morals and godliness, then even if our amal is few, Allah will raise us up with the people whom we love. Allah will raise us up in Akhirah with the people whom we love, of godly, good morals. So we ask Allah Jalla wa Ala that He give us tawfiq, that He puts virtue in our hearts, that He puts an aspiration to seek Him, that He help us move away from this dunya, at least with our hearts, if not with our bodies, but our hearts, and that He makes our hearts move towards Him, and that He accepts the little that we do, and that He forgive our sins, and that He forgive us our making the dunya our goal, and that He forgive us that we began to betray the message of the Prophet ﷺ, and we began to forget our amana to Allah and to His Rasul ﷺ. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He give us khair, and that He give us tawfiq, and that He give us taysir. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun, wa salamun ala al-mursaleen, walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.
Any questions or comments? Go.
The command to obviously stay up at night and do Qiyamul Layl, it just comes to my head that Salah wasn't formally revealed at that time. So what kind of prayer?
Barakallahu feekum.
Also, if only 3 surahs are revealed at that time, or 2 surahs, how much Quran could there be?
Wallahi, barakallahu feekum. You know, just in case, so the brother is asking, his brother has gone inside my head. Because the same way you asked this question, I asked myself this question. And in the same order you asked it, I asked myself this question. But the brother has a nicer smile than I kind of had a frown when I was asking. So this order for Qiyamul Layl in Surah Muzammil, before the formal 5 daily prayers were revealed. How were they praying the prayer? Had they been taught a prayer to pray? And since there'd only been 3 or a few surahs revealed, what were they reciting in the prayer? Wallahu a'lam. I looked at all of these books that I have at home, and then I was thinking to ask Sheikh Mufti Taqi yesterday. Yeah. Then when I saw the amount of people, I thought there's no chance that's going to happen at all. So Wallahu a'lam. And I don't want to guess to say that they were reciting this and then they were doing the prayer there. But it's that same question of what the Prophet ﷺ was doing, what type of ibadah was he doing in the Hira cave. Maybe there was they say there are some reminiscences of the Abrahamic way of worship was left over. Some sujood and ruku was there. But the actual form, the hay'ah of the prayer comes a bit later on. So wallahu alam. It's a brilliant question. But who knows? Wallahu alam. But they are instructed to recite the Quran. That's clear. That their ibadah involves reciting the Quran and glorifying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and keeping away from immorality and shirk. Allah knows
clearly qiyam, so qumil layla,
and there is qiyam.
Qiyam there will definitely.
And generally our scholars say there must be some type of ruku and sujood, because Abrahamically there has always been some type of sujood. Sometimes ruku and sujood is one and the same thing. Ruku is sujood, or sometimes sujood is ruku. So there is either bowing and prostrating, or just bowing or just prostrating. But there is something of that there, according to what Ibn Hajar and others have said of that type of ibadah. But it is speculative, we don't have any text for that.
One suggestion from some of the teachers, or some of my teachers, was that Surah Fatiha was revealed as a whole surah after Iqra was the first surah. So obviously Surah Fatiha was revealed. In fact, there's a minority opinion on this, which is that Surah Fatiha was the surah that which was shown to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the cave of Hira, said, read. And he said, I don't read, I don't know how to read. And that was the, Sabham min al-Mathani, wal Quran al-Ladhi, as Quran would say, asked him to just keep reciting, but he couldn't. Then obviously Jibril then perhaps left that, and then, so he perhaps had Surah Fatiha, but that's a very minority view. But the majority view is after Iqra, Surah Fatiha was revealed as a whole surah, and that's why most scholars would say this is the first surah to be revealed, to mean that this is the first surah as a whole to be revealed. Iqra, everyone agrees it was before this. So obviously they were reciting that clearly. And that was the main thing, and then hold so on. Inshallah, I think it's a good idea to just look into that. Ask some of the
Yeah,
shuyukh,
no, I have
shaykhs
been,
as well.
mashallah, but I think it's a matter of asking the shaykhs
Yeah, I will
rather than
ask
looking into the books.
Mufti Ibrahim, inshallah, and then get back to you on that.
Because, I kind of looked into the most obvious larger books. Ibn Kathir's 4 volumes. Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani has a lot of tahqiq in seerah. And it's kind of, I didn't find anything. This book in 4 volumes is also very deep. Didn't have anything.
The gut feeling in one way, based on this idea of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or the Quran commanding Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and believers to pray as people pray. وَارْكَعُوا مَعَ الرَّاكِعِينَ. This type command when it comes as a obligation of the prayer. And when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam goes up to meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on Mi'raj and Ascension, and then the idea of 50 prayer and then coming down. There's no description at that point even, which means that people had some clear idea as to what they're doing. Oh, so this is where the wahi ghair matlu comes in. There's 2 types of wahi. One is revealed and is written down. One is revealed, which is not recited. So the one that is recited as in Quran form, the one that is not recited. So that could have been gifted to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, revealed to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then he already knew, and people actually knew how to pray. And then he obviously made it clear to people. Allah knows.
I wonder if that's because we follow 2 different fiqhs. So the one who follows the Hanafi fiqh, he's beginning to try to put things together. The one who follows Hanbali fiqh just said, well, if I find a hadith, I'll say it. If I don't, we just move on.
A bit of an add-on to that. Before Prophet Prophet's revelation, there was, I've always forget the man's name. I think it was something bin Nawafil.
No, not
him. The one before that.
Or Zayd ibn
Ala. He was a wahid.
Yeah. So he's one of the Hunafa, the Hanifs.
He was worshipping as Ibrahim and Islam would worship. So some remnants of how Ibrahim and Islam was worshipping was still around.
That's what they say. It's not that he was worshipping as Ibrahim, but some remnants, the Hunafa, those Hanif people who shunned idolatry, they were doing certain acts of worship, which seems to be inherited throughout the ages, also including through the Quraysh, that they knew some of these acts. So Wallah, it could be something like that, but we're not entirely sure, and most of it is ijtihad and speculation. Allah knows best, but it's a fantastic question. Sorry, no, Afwan, Brother Salam had a question before.
I mean, the question I was about to ask is already been answered, but I can just say, well, I mean, this is again speculation. If you go to some of these Arab countries, they can sit down and can repeat something again and again and again and again for hours. They could be saying, Ya Allah, Ya Allah, Ya Allah. It could be something like that they're doing. This is a speculation, of course.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, so that could be the form of worship that could be going on for hours, because your thing is, if there's only 3 surahs, even if you read them in the slowest manner, how long is that going to take? 10, 15 minutes. So maybe more was there, maybe it was repetitive. Yeah. So Allah knows best.
Yeah. You mentioned about becoming dunyafied and things related to that. Just a couple of examples. I was with a brother recently who, as far as I know, is actually a graduate from Darul Uloom, and he was insisting that benefit fraud is okay, and the justification he gave for it was, the government are stealing our money, so we can steal it back. And I was trying to explain to him, look, 2 wrongs don't make a right. And in the same way, when you said that, people might have the attitude where, what's wrong with me having the latest Audi or making a games room and a loft conversion, blah, 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 when Muslims over there are spending billions on World Cups and things. So how do we combat this attitude that a lot of Muslims have, that actually 2 wrongs do make a right? How do we combat this? Because I meet so many people like that, actually, and they say to me, oh, I don't do that, well, I don't do that, I don't do that, so-and-so's doing that. How do we combat this kind of attitude? Because it seems like it's everywhere.
Yesterday Mufti Taqi said in a small gathering in East London, in North London, that he didn't like a particular phrase when a student graduates from one of the kind of Urdu-speaking madrasas. What was the Urdu term that he used? Farigh,
Farigh al-tahsil.
Yeah, Farigh al-tahsil. So how would you nicely translate that into English?
So you've...
Farigh means become free, that you're kind of completed.
Free from acquiring knowledge, like you've absolved now from...
Tahsil means study.
Come to the saturation, when you're saturated from your knowledge.
And his Mufti Taqi's problem with that phrase, which is, of course, when people do farigh tahsil, when they graduate, technically they are now no longer in pursuit of knowledge. It's understood that it doesn't mean you stop knowledge, but he goes, it's not a befitting term because an alim he never stops pursuing religious knowledge, inshallah, for the right reasons. And then he just, and he said one or two things which really struck the hearts of many of the ulama there, and really got to have humbled them really big time. Anyway, if what you say is correct from this graduate, then he's done exactly that. A'udhu billah, farigh tahsil. And whatever he's learned, okay, he's just stopped there and he hasn't moved forward. Because this is not either this person is a mufti qualified and he knows the situation here and everything and whatever, and he's sat down with his elder mufti sheikhs and he's come to this conclusion, and I'd be surprised if that's the case. If you said to me that this was just an ordinary Muslim who says these things, and why can't you have an Audi as well, and whatever, I say, ordinary Muslims who are away from acquiring knowledge and sitting with the ulama, it can easily happen to them to say these things. Allah have mercy upon them. May Allah give them good courage and himmah. But it becomes more problematic. We can still make the dua for any Muslim, but it becomes more problematic if someone has gone through a period of religious training, and then one comes up with this. If the students of knowledge and the ulama have this attitude of why, and not aim for something a bit higher, how are we going to ever encourage the rest of the ummah to aim higher? And just aim first. So I suggest it's a case of, if it is true what you said, and you remembered correctly, that his attitude is worse than the action. Okay, the attitude is wrong from a student of knowledge. Rather, the student of knowledge say, how can we keep, without betraying a contract or a promise or an agreement, how can we preserve and honor agreements? Okay, that's the word of piety. And how can we get the world to cut down in its consumerism and its worldliness, and if not, then at least us, the Muslims, to cut down, not to give up, because we're in this dunya. And they do it. There's 101 things that they do. So I don't know. Wallah, it's frightening. But then this is an age in which طلاب العلم, unfortunately, like myself, we're really good at speaking, but and it's really the example. It's examples. We really need to. Ilm begets that you lead by example. Yeah, it's just one of the things that is there. Who knows best? Allah knows best. We ask Allah for tawfiq.
Going back to the seerah, is there any detailed description of when Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu converted to, accepted the Shahada? Was there any what was the conversation? Is there anything about that?
As far as I'm aware, I'm not aware of any kind of hadith or narratives, even in Sirah ibn Hisham, which is probably one of the earliest, and the Tabaqat ibn Sa'ad, where it gives even conversion short stories, and it's again even earlier than Ibn Hisham, or roughly the same, the 2nd century, 3rd century. There's nothing like that as far as I'm aware. Are you aware of anything?
Yes, so there's this hadith where Rasulullah said that everyone who I presented the message to has had some questions barring Abu Bakr Siddiq.
Yeah.
I just mentioned it to him and he just accepted it. It's fine now. So for him it was not a matter of discussion. He didn't even question anything. He said, I've been made prophet because of your character. You're the one who is worthy of being Subhanallah, I'm with you. So day one, the minute he was told about that, could be day 2 or 3 or 4 or whatever, but then he accepted immediately.
Yeah, and it's likely to be, according to this book, and this author, and the early sources he quotes, it's likely to be day 2, 3 or 4. But the point that Dr. Salim made is absolutely, the Prophet did say to everyone who I presented the message, they had one objection or the other, one thing or the other, one question or the other, okay, and some of them then accepted, some of them didn't. But Abu Bakr was just, okay, tasdeeq, iman. Day 1 seems to be straight away, hour 1, Lady Khadija, and the immediate household.
Yeah, the reason why I purposely mentioned Zayd ibn Harith, Ali ibn Abdul.
So they seem to be all within day one.
First.
Yeah.
All day one
obviously
because
they
they're
live
family.
amongst Allah,
Yeah,
so-
and they trust him and their family, and they have that connection with him. Outside of the blood family, Abu Bakr is the first, and it becomes day 2 or day 3.
There is no family connection with Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, is
I mean, eventually there
No,
is.
I'm talking about
Yeah,
at
but
the
no,
moment,
right
there
then,
isn't.
no.
It's
No.
just the fact that
Is it not because they're friend, and a friend trusts a
Exactly.
friend that is ready
like
to
a
put
friendship.
his life
Yeah, but
down?
what level of friendship, you know?
I
Your
know, I
friend,
know.
your best friend comes to you and says, "Oh, by the way, I just went to space and back." All in everything. My friends, you know,
Honest friend.
I mean, they were the
had too much
closest.
burrata.
I
Yeah.
mean, you could just similarity between the two. You can imagine just by listening to what we heard from Sheikh about when Sayyidah Khadija and Rasulullah comes back and he said, "Zammiluni and the Thiruni" type thing. What she said, I fear for my life. I'm concerned. Maybe I'm possessed. Maybe I've gone mad now. Words to the effect. And Sayyidah Khadija says, no, wallahi, you do this. You look after the orphans. You help the poor. You help the, those words. Exactly same words are used for Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq by what's his name? Atim ibn Makhzum or something. Some person I can't remember. The non-Muslim, when Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq left the city and he was about to migrate out from Mecca when people were giving him a tough time. So this man caught him en route and said, "Where are you going? The person like you cannot leave the city. You are under my what you call protection." And he said, "Because you do this, and you do this, and you do this." Exactly same words from that non-Muslim for Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq as came from Sayyidina Khadija. It's just amazing. Because they were so similar. He was just in a way mirroring Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
And there's also only 2.5 years difference between them
Exactly.
anyway. You know, he radiallahu anhu is 2.5 years younger than the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But otherwise, their characters are impeccable. Okay.
And hence, you know, the Siddiqi, when he was called Siddiq that day, it was just that when it's amazing. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, one narration is with Hani, the cousin, sister of Sayyidina Ali, in the house. And then when he did come back from his Mi'raj and Isra, and he narrated all that to Hani, he was so pleased with that, subhanallah. And then he said, "Inshallah, I am going out, so are you going to tell the people in Mecca?" Yes. The brother, I beg that don't do that. In fact, narrate it to me again if you have to. Just tell me, I'm quite interested in it. I said, "But don't go out. I know what people would do. I have to do it. This is my job. I have to reveal it to people." He went out, and first man he found was Abu Jahl. And Abu Jahl said, "Oh, something new." And this is what he mentioned us. He wanted to obviously say something, but he said, "No, would you say this to everyone in Mecca?" And in his mind, he's quite happy that people would leave him now. He said, "No, don't worry. If that's the case, I would get the people." And he's the one going out. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make him gather the people around for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because he actually needed to go to this market, that place, this place, there, here, and there. He gathered everyone around and called him. "Oh, people come, Muhammad has a message. Oh, people come, Muhammad has a message and something important to say." And Abu Jahl is informing about that. They all gathered very, for something strange. And when he mentioned, obviously they mock or whatever, someone then told Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq he wasn't there. And it's in the market somewhere he was. Then he mentioned, "Is it possible that someone could go to Masjid al-Aqsa, which is in Palestine, within a day and come?" "No, it takes a month. I've taken that journey. It's a month that way and a month back, so obviously not possible." But then who's saying that? His next question was, "Muhammad, then it's possible. It's definitely happened." And then he started rushing back to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, saying what happened. And then Rasulullah is narrating the story, and he said, "Sadaqa Rasulullah, Sadaqa Rasulullah." Every sentence he would say, "Sadaqa Rasulullah, Sadaqa Rasulullah." And that's when he got this title of Siddiq, the one who testifies to, without asking anything. Although a minute before he was saying it's impossible, it's a lie, can't happen. But if he says that, alhamdulillah, definite possibility. And in fact, that happened. So his was just so clear and open that no question, straight away. That's why it's Siddiqiyya. Status.
Any final questions? Okay, then just before we leave, let me just run off names, just for the sake of barakah that we listen to these names, of in the early days when Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu becomes Muslim, who he gives dawah to and who accepts Islam at his hands. Okay, we just read the names, not the conversion stories. So amongst them, Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, he begins to do da'wah, and those who accept Islam at his hands, Uthman ibn Affan radiallahu anhu, Zubayr ibn al-Awwam, Abdul Rahman ibn Auf, and Sa'ad ibn Abi Waqqas, and Talha ibn Ubaidullah. Those are the kind of initial, which are the core kind of people that we know
All
as
of
well.
them are Ashara
Mubasharat, actually. And then thereafter, people like Abu Ubaid ibn al-Jarrah, one of the Ashara, Abu Salama and Al-Aqram, and Uthman ibn Ma'dhun and his brother Qudama, and Abdullah and Ubaidullah ibn al-Harith, and Sa'ad ibn Zayd, and who is Amr ibn Nufail's son, the Hanif, and his wife Fatima, and Asma bint Abi Bakr. And it goes on, actually, radiyallahu anhum ajmain. There's quite a few, and these are just in the early days. Sayyid ibn Zayd as well, Sayyid ibn Zayd, so that makes all of the 10 as
Barring
well.
Ali and Umar.
Yeah,
Everyone came to
Subhanallah.
Islam through him.
because, subhanallah, Siddiq's maqam and what we owe him, radiyallahu anhu, in his commitment to Islam. And there could have only been one Siddiq around the Prophet ﷺ, really. Okay, because really, it's just an amazing thing. And hence, leaving all the prophets and the messengers, alayhimus salatu wasalam, the one who has the highest rank with Allah in the whole of humanity after the Anbiya and the Rasul, alayhimus salatu wasalam, is Sayyiduna Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. Subhanallah, and you can begin to see why we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He bless and be pleased with all of the companions of the Prophet radiallahu anhum ajma'in. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He give us tawfiq to follow in their footsteps. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wa salamun ala al-mursaleen walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Alhamdulillah.